Hi everyone. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask you guys to stop making updates to your Jupyter notebooks now. Don't worry if there's more updates that you want to make later. Of course, you'll be able to do this. We could keep your accounts active through the time that you teach. That's not a problem. So I just want to take the time now to show you guys how, once you do have finished any modifications you want to make to the notebooks, how to copy it to the location that I have set up for everyone in the system. So that way, when you teach at your home institution, you can have your students copy the content into their home directories. So that way it'll be your modified version instead of the ones that you started with me and Lauren. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So the first thing that I want you all to do is go ahead and, I guess, is there anyone that can't see my screen? Make sure everyone can see. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is any notebook that you have up that you've been making modifications to, go ahead and hit the save button. So you just want to do that to all the notebooks that you have up, that you've made changes to. And then once you've done that, if you have generated outputs, remember when you want your students to run these, you want all of the outputs to be cleared. And so if you have generated outputs, the next thing I'll have you do, if you want them to be completed, if you want a version where you already have your outputs completed, you can go ahead and make a new folder and say like my own, you can name it however you want, my own Jans or something like that. And then I want you to make a copy of all of your notebooks. So you would highlight all of them, right click, and click copy. And then once you've copied all of them, go into the directory you just made, my own Jans or whatever you named it, and then just right click and click paste. And now you'll have a version of all the notebooks with the outputs that you currently had. So make sure that you do this if you don't want to lose your outputs before the next step. So go ahead and do that. After you've copied your notebooks with any outputs that you've made to the new directory that you just created, go back to your home directory. So because you copied and didn't move those, you'll still have those same copies of your notebooks available in your home directory. And then so with the copies in your home directory, again, after you've made a copy in a subdirectory that contains the outputs that you have, go ahead and click on each one that you want to save. So I'll start with this one on my end. And we want to clear all the outputs. And the reason is so that way the version of this that you save is going to not have any outputs, because that's the version that the students are going to be copying into their home directory. So you want it to not have any outputs yet. So in order to clear all your outputs, you're going to click on the notebook of interest and then go to File, or sorry, not File, excuse me, go to Kernel. And then you're going to go to Restart Kernel and clear all outputs. And that's going to clear all the outputs in your current Jupyter notebook. So I'm actually going to do it with this one, so I'm not ready to deal with this one yet. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So Kernel, and I'm going to click Clear All Outputs, Restart Kernel and clear all outputs. And it will remind you that once you start the kernel, of course, all your variables and any outputs are going to be lost. So go ahead and click Restart. And then once you do that, you should see as you scroll down that there are no outputs in your notebook. So any outputs that you had there will not be there, but of course any of the changes that you've made to the markdown blocks or any additional code blocks that you added will be there, just none of the outputs will be. So go ahead and do that for all of your notebooks that you've made changes for. So I'll just show you one more time here. So just looking at another one, let me make some outputs here. This has some outputs. So again, just show you what it looks like. If you have outputs, you will see those outputs on your screen. And then before we copy them over, I want you to clear all outputs. So again, kernel, restart kernel and clear all outputs. Go ahead and restart. And then what you'll see is that whereas there are outputs on here before, there are no more outputs. Of course, those code blocks are still maintained. Does anyone need more time to save their notebooks or clear all their outputs before I show you how to copy them? Or does anyone want me to go over that again? Okay, so that's clear. Good. So now that you guys have cleared all your outputs, make sure that you save again. So save it now this time with all the outputs cleared. So click that save button. And again, for any of the notebooks that you've modified that you want to use for your students, once you clear all the outputs, go ahead and save it again. So that way the version that's saved is the one that doesn't have the outputs. And then once you've done that, I want you to open up a terminal window. And so you do that by clicking the blue plus sign at the top left corner. And that'll bring up this launcher homepage, and you just go down underneath the other section and click on terminal. And that'll bring up a terminal like what we've been working with various points during the bootcamp. And I want you to first see where you are in your terminal. What command do you use to see where you are? You guys type in the chat. Yeah, Mark, pwd. So I want everyone to write pwd and make sure you are in your home directory because that's where all the notebooks are that you've been working on. If you're not in your home directory, can you guys put in some commands you could use to move into your home directory? If you're not already there, what's some commands you could use to move there on the terminal? Yeah, Mark, Ty, right. So cd, tilde will get you there. You can do it with or without the slash, the / afterwards. They'll both work. You could also write cd with the explicit path, which is home Jovian. And that'll get you there too. So whatever you want to do, I'm going to go ahead and do the tilde. And then again, just pwd once you do that to make sure that you are indeed in your home directory. Once you're in there, I want you to list your files. Also cd by itself. Oh, good point, Mike. Yeah, so if you just press cd, it'll assume that you want to go to your home directory and bring you there. Once you're here, I want you to take a look at what files you have in there. So what command do we use to see what's in our current working directory? Yeah, Ty, ls. So we could type ls, and you should see your notebooks in here. And so again, Jupyter notebooks end in .ipynb, IP for Python and B for notebook. And so you want to make sure this is where the notebooks that you saved with the outputs cleared, so no outputs at this point should be on there, are going to exist. And then we want to copy just the notebooks, which are just the files that end in .ipynb. I already copied the text files that we start with in the Unix and in the R intro Jupyter notebooks. So in the directories I'm going to have you copy to, you already have your Saturn.txt, example.csv file, and example.txt file in there. So you don't have to worry about copying that. Does anyone know, I guess first, how to only list files that end in .ipynb? I think I went over this once, but it was very quick. Anyone know what the command would be? If you want to list files in your current directory, any file that ends in .ipynb, what would that command look like? Yeah, Susie, that's exactly right. So you would do your ls command, except we want, it can start with anything. In coding languages, the symbol that we use to say anything is the wildcard or the asterisk. And then, but you want to make sure that it ends in .ipynb. And so basically this is saying, I want you to list a file. It doesn't matter what it starts with, so long as it ends in .ipynb. And you can go ahead and run that command. And what you should see is each of the Jupyter notebooks should be the only ones that you see. And these are of course, being in your home directory, the ones that you've modified. And so now we want to copy these to another location. So Do you guys remember the command to copy files? Yeah, CP. Right. So we want to, yeah, that's right, Ty. So we want to copy these files, but we just want to copy the files that end in .ipynb. So we can copy and paste this syntax. So it's going to be CP star .ipynb, a space, and then we want the location to copy these to, and that location, I'm putting in the chat now, is going to be that, but you want to change that last folder. So I have it here, but this last part is going to be the first initial of your first name followed by your last name in all lowercase. So for me, I just use the first part of my hyphen for mine. So mine's A for Amanda, and then the start, at least, of my last name, Saravia. I knew how to spell my name right. And then underscore JN. So basically you can copy and paste this command, but just make sure you change my name to yours.
Hey, Amanda.
Yeah.
Why don't you run ls on that root directory and everyone can see their names as they're written in there?
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay. So I am going to, so yeah, if we take a look, and I'm going to add an option to ls to list everything in single file. Do you guys remember what the option is for ls to list in a single file? Curious. Yeah, Susie. So ls-1, and then I'm listing everything that comes before your name. And so when I go ahead, let me copy and paste this command in the chat so you guys can do this too. So if you go ahead and run that, what you're going to see is a list of a few things that I have in there, but importantly down, well, mixed in here. So you'll notice that you'll see a folder that has the first initial of your first name followed by your last name, all in lowercase with an underscore and then JNs. So you'll see Chief's here and Elba's here and Jason's here, etc. And so what we're doing is we're going to copy the notebooks that you have in your home directory that you modified into your specific directory within this structure. So that way it's in a more stable location that everyone can access. So like right now, I can't access your home directory and you can't access my home directory. So we need to put this in a location on the system where anyone can access. So that way your students will also be able to access those files. And so what you're going to do is just, again, it's that copy command. Oh, I never actually ran it. So it's going to be CP, the one I put in the chat, the *.ipynb, again, because we're in our home directory. So we're going to copy all the files that end in .ipynb, and we're going to copy it into this location within the system, which is going to end in the first letter of your first name, followed by your full last name, all lowercase, underscore JNs. And then just to show you before and after what this looks like. So I haven't run my copy command yet. Anytime you add a hashtag, remember it's a comment, so the system knows not to interpret that as a command. So before I do that, I just want to show you what I have in mine, and same with all of yours. Oh, actually, this, you guys will have stuff. I just realized that I put that in mine. So, oh, I must have copied this. I did copy it to show you guys, but all of yours will just, let me look at one of yours, unless you already ran the command, then you might. So Chief, I'm gonna go ahead and look at yours. So if you look inside each of your directories now with ls-1, what you'll see is those 3 files that we use in the Intro Unix and Intro R Jupyter notebooks. So that's why you guys don't have to copy those, because I put those in all of your directories. And so what you want to do is, in addition to those, you want to copy your modified Jupyter notebooks. So this is the command that you're going to put, except again, just make sure you're using your name at the end there. And so everyone can go ahead and run that command. And then once you do, you can ls -1 again into your directory, and you should see your IPYNB files in there. And so if you guys have not finished updating your notebooks, that's perfectly fine. Just whenever, as you go through the next few days or weeks and make modifications, it's the same thing. Make modifications to the notebooks that are in your home directory. Make sure you save your modifications. If you have outputs in there, first go to Kernel, restart Kernel and clear all outputs to make sure all the outputs are clear. You'll hit save again. And then you'll open up a terminal window, you'll cd into your home directory, and then you'll list what's in your home directory just to make sure your notebooks are there and visible. And then you'll copy just your notebooks into the directory that I set up for you, which again, this part of it would be your first initial followed by your full last name all in lowercase _JNs, and then press enter. And if you did copy ones now over there, if they have the same name, it'll overwrite to the new version. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, for sure. So this is the command, but again, you wanna first make sure that you're in your home directory. So I guess I should do this. So cd home should be the first command you run. And then you want to run ls to make sure you see your notebooks in there. And then you want to run that copy command, keeping in mind that change that so that you're not writing in my directory, but you're writing in your directory. So that where it says A Sarabia in the command that I just typed in the chat, that would be your first initial followed by your full last name, all lowercase _JNs. And then you could check to make sure that you put what you wanted to in your own directory. So I'll check one of yours. So Chief, I used yours before. I don't know if you're here. So I'll look at yours, or not CD, I'm gonna ls. And so Chief has not copied anything yet. So you guys can look and see what's in other people's directories. We all have actually the same username, so make sure that you're not changing things in other people's directories. That's not nice. So don't change anything in anyone else's directories but yours. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that. It's how SMC sets up for groups. So just make sure that you are copying files only into your directory. Is there anyone else who wants to see that again or is unclear on how to make updates to their Jupyter notebook in their home directory, save it, and copy that into their directories in within the system? And when I send, I'll send a follow-up email early next week, just summarizing this information, because this stuff in particular is not on the GitHub, because I don't want to give path information to the public. So, and because I don't, not path information, that's why I don't want to give your names to the public. So I will send an email with instructions again for how to do this specifically. Anyone else want to see that? Is there anyone who copied files into their directory that I can use as an example to show what it looks like? Excellent. Okay, so let's try Ty. So that's Ty's one. I'm going to do a -1 here just to list it in single file. And so you'll see that Ty copied her folder, whereas before it was just the Saturn.txt and the example.csv and example.txt. She's now added her Jupyter notebooks that she was working on to there. And so again, if you make additional updates to the ones in your home directory, for those of you guys who haven't finished updating it how you wanted, you could just run this command and it'll overwrite what was in there at the end of this notebook. And that's another reason why I always like to make a new folder in my home directory, copy any Jupyter notebook that I have there before I go ahead and copy it into this location. Again, just saving a backup just in case you overwrite something and then realize that you wanted to go back. You'll always have a copy in your own home directory. And so that's how you would move files over. Again, I'll summarize all of this in a closing email that I'll send out early next week. And so once you have everything there, I also set up commands. You might have noticed when I did the list in that directory that's one up from your own directories, you'll notice that there's a series of copy commands. And these copy commands, this is the one that we did at the start to get all of the notebooks as Lauren and I put them together into your home directories. Now you'll also see a copy command for each one of you guys. So that's the copy command that you're going to use for your students in order to copy things from your directory, so your modified versions, into their home directories when you teach it. And I have those instructions written on GitHub, which I'm going to go over now. Is everyone good with copying files into the system, this EFS location? Okay, great.
Will they be able to overwrite one another's notebooks with a similarly configured system?
Yes, you can. Unfortunately, yeah, that was one of the caveats we asked about this. So please make sure that you are only writing into your directory and not anybody else's. And also make sure that you copy make a copy of what you've modified in your own home directory. So in your own home directory, no one can touch that. No one else can do anything in there except you. So make a copy of what you want in your home directory just in case. And then I would even say that just before you start teaching, go ahead and recopy your copy into that EFS location, just in case someone overwrote the stuff in your in your directory in the system.
But I'm saying we're going to emulate, we're going to have directories for our students like these. And so my question is, can they overwrite theirs?
You're not gonna have directories like these for your students. These are just for you
Okay.
guys as educators. Yeah. So this is so that when you modify things, you can run your modified your students will be able to run your modified Jupyter notebooks. Yeah, so all your students would only be working in their own home directory. We want to keep them blind to this location so that way they don't start messing with things. So yeah, your students would only be printing out to their home location, and then they can of course download things locally from home. Yeah, so this is only for you guys as educators here. That way you can save your modified versions and make them accessible to your students. Okay. So in this last half hour before lunch, I want to go over the GitHub repository. So this is going to give you the information that you need for what to do to teach this at your home institution. So in here, this is the start of GitHub for this specific bootcamp. So that's the link to it. And then you'll see a series of folders here. They're accessible by clicking them here. There's also descriptions, and they're accessible by clicking any of these links. And so here is just an overview and summary of the pilot bootcamp with links to the various contributors for the content and for the funding if you want to learn more about them. More about that. I also have a link in here to the student bootcamp that was taught last year if you're curious about that information. This links out to the actual GeneLab processing pipeline that we used in the bootcamp, because remember, we change our pipelines, we update them annually. And then we have here, this is links out to the schedule. So the materials were organized into a week and a half long training form. Actually 2 weeks, I had to change that to schedule. And that will link you to our schedule that we've been going over. And so the schedule has been modified so it matches the time frames that we actually use to go over. And you can also get to the bootcamp schedule by clicking it at the top as well. And then we have this area here for Bootcamp setup instructions. So to run this at your home institution, instructors must request a time slot for resources on the NCCS SMCE system and accounts to be set up for all students who plan to participate. The instructions to request resources and accounts, as well as details about how to get started, can be found here in this NCCS SMCE Bootcamp setup. So again, you can get there by clicking on this part of the GitHub, or you can also jump right here at the top to this NCCS SMCE Bootcamp setup. So I'll go from the link here. And so this here is when you guys are ready to teach this. These are instructions. So just again, a little summary about what this is, the version of our pipeline that was used, and just links out to the SMCE if you guys want to learn more about it. And then this links out to Jupyter Hub if you want to learn more about Jupyter Hub. And so the first thing I want to go over with you guys is the request access to the NCCS SMC GL4U Jupyter Hub. You guys probably all received emails inviting you to a calendar called a Google Calendar called GL4U. This is that Google Calendar. So you can access the calendar by clicking on the link that says here. It says here only one educator per 3-week time slot. Again, this is originally what we budgeted for, but as I mentioned a few times, our stakeholders and the people funding us are supportive, and we can get additional funds if you guys want longer time slots. So again, think of this more as a suggestion. If you guys want longer time, please request longer time. We'll find the funds. We really want you guys to be successful when you teach this at your home institutions. So you're going to click on here, and that's going to bring up a Google Calendar. And so in this Google Calendar, you're going to click Create, and under Create, you're going to create an event, and that'll bring up this box here. And so you guys don't have to memorize this. I have this all with images written out in the GitHub. And so you open up a calendar. This is the part where we're on now. Click Select, click Create button, and then select Event. So that's what it looks like here. And then it'll bring up this window. So for the event name, I want you to write your first initial followed by your last name and then an underscore followed by GL4U. So it'll look like this. So if we go to the actual Google Calendar here, basically the title of your event should be the first letter of your first name followed by your full last name, underscore GL4U. And then the next thing you're going to do, following the instructions is written out here, the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to click on the box next to the clock icon to bring up the calendar and select your desired start date. And so in here, I'm going to go, here's the clock icon, right to next to it, and click, and that'll bring up a little calendar, and then you'll click on your start date. So if I want to start having access on June 19th, I click here. And then in order to get your end date to be a new date, you have to click this all day box. And so again, don't have to memorize this. I have this written out as long as you follow each one of the instructions. The next one says click the all day box, which will change the end time to a date as shown. And we can also see that here. Now we have a date coming up to the right of our start date. So we click on that, bring up our calendar again. And then you could say, okay, I want access from June 19th until July 16th. And now you'll have that set up. So again, written out here. So click on the box to the right of your start date and select your desired end date like I just did. And the next thing you want to do is make sure that you're saving this to the GL4U calendar. And so the next thing that you want to do is next to this calendar icon here, you want to click on it, and then you want to select GL4U. So make sure that next to that little calendar icon, you see GL4U written there. So that way it's saved to this GL4U calendar that we can all see. And then again, that's written out here with images and the instructions on GitHub. Then after you do that, you just click Save. And so I'll go ahead and click Save. And that will create the event. You saw it populate in here in my calendar. Now, if you accidentally picked a time that, if you messed up in the dates that you scheduled, or if something came up and you're going to teach it at a later date or an earlier date, you can just go to the Google Calendar and then you just select on your reservation and you click the little pencil icon, which will allow you to edit your event. So if I wanted to edit this, I would click on the event that I made, and then it'll bring up this box, and I just click the little edit event button, and then it'll bring up that same thing that we were looking at before in a little bit different format. So the dates are up here this time, and again, you could just change your start date and your end date however you need it to be changed, and this will also allow you to add notifications for yourself. Any questions about how to use the Google Calendar, how to sign up for time slots? Is clear? Okay, and again, the instructions with images are all written up on GitHub, and of course, if that's not clear, you can always reach out to me or to Lauren, and we can make sure that you schedule things appropriately. Once you have scheduled your time, send a list. I have here again up to 30 students. If you have more students that you want, that's fine. Just let me know. And again, I was confidently told that we'll be able to get the resources to do that. So I just have up here of up to 30 students, but I have since been told that we can be flexible with that. So however many students that you're planning to teach, you want to have each student list and you want to send me the following information. So I have my email address on here in case you guys forget or lose it. And I want you to send me this list at least 2 weeks before your scheduled start of your time slot. So about 2 weeks before your time slot, I need you to send me the same information that you guys sent me for you, but for you and your students. Well, I guess you don't have to send it to me for you again. I could use the same information that you provided previously unless you want me to change anything. So you'll send me a list of each student's full name, their proposed username, and again, I have the suggestion here of their last name followed by an underscore and then their first initial, but if there's another username that your students want to do, they can do that. Keep in mind, our POCs will give them the username that's proposed unless it's already in use. If it's already in use, they'll probably add a character at the end, like a 1 or 2 or something like that. Also, the email address that your students want us to use, and then a US phone number capable of receiving SMS text messages. So I would need this information for every one of your students who's going to take the course. About that US phone number, since some of you guys will potentially have students that might not have access to an SMS phone number, just in that location, let me know, indicate that this student will not have access, and we'll work with SMCE to get around that. So they've also said as long as it's not an overwhelming number of students, we can remove the multi-factor authentication for a handful of students if needed, if they don't have access to text message. The other alternative is if you have like a full class, which might not be SMC might not be as accommodating for a full class where no one has multi-factor authentication. In that context, we could do something like set up a Google Voice number that will require some finagling if they're out of country, because they'd have to set a VPN to US. There's I think the Opera browser has VPN capabilities, and you would just set your VPN to US, and then you would go to Google Voice and set up a US number. So we'll use that as a backup plan if SMC gives pushback for multiple students not having access to a US phone number. So we'll use that as our backup plan. We'll tackle that together if and when that becomes an issue. And then once you give me this information, again, 2 weeks before your start time, I'll pass it along to our SMCE POCs to get accounts set up. And then I'll notify you once I hear from them that all your accounts have been set up. And so that notification will come within about a week of your time slot. Any questions about signing up for time slots or what information I'll need from all students who you plan to teach the content to? Okay, great. Again, if questions come up, you guys know where to reach me. getting started. So once you have all of your students' accounts set up, you're ready to get going with the material. With GitHub, it's not really set up to host like large files. So I do have PDF versions of all the lectures on here, which I'll show you in a second. But the PowerPoints, of course, have animations and stuff that we all went through. So you guys do have access to the PowerPoints through the Google Drive. PDFs are going to be on GitHub that you'll be able to have through GitHub, or of course you convert your PowerPoint to PDF, or if you guys really want me to, I can upload PDFs version of all the slides to the GitHub or to the Google Drive. So, so now once you have all of your student accounts ready to go and you're ready to get started, you have all your lectures ready to go. And so what you would do when you're ready to start is you would have all of your students go to that same site we've been going to. I do just want to give you a heads up that SMCE has recently gotten approval by NASA to have a .nasa.gov extension. So you'll notice that this is still .com. They might migrate over before you teach your course. So if that's the case, I'll be sure to update the GitHub. So this link, so whatever this link is at the time that you're teaching, that's where you'll have your students go, and you'll go as well. And so this is that same link that we've all been joining to log into the SMCE system. And then I just have a note here that if it's your first time logging in, you're going to be prompted to change your password, right? So everyone's initially, just like you guys all did, are going to log in with your username and the password that is sent to you by the SMCE team. And then first time you log in, you'll be prompted to change your password. Make sure you tell your students to save their passwords. If anyone forgets their passwords, let me know. We'll have to reach out to our SMCE POCs to get them reset. So make sure you tell your students to write down the passwords that they change their accounts to. And then that, of course, as you guys all know, is going to bring up server options. And so just as we've been doing every day at the bootcamp, you and your students will select the small server on demand option, and then you'll click start to load that. And once that server is up and running, it'll open up automatically the launcher window, and you're going to have them go down just like we did under other and click terminal. And then in that terminal window, they're going to copy and paste this command if you want to use the Jupyter notebooks that you guys ran with me and Lauren. So if you want to use the ones that we did that aren't modified, you can have everyone run this command. And I have a little note in here that if you modify the Jupyter notebooks and want to use your modified Jupyter notebooks when teaching at your home institution, this would have to be after you copied them to your directories that I just showed you. So once those are copied there, they'll be accessible by all students by running the copy command. And so you would just have to replace this part of the command with the first letter of with the first initial of your first name and with your full last name, all lowercase. So with this here, like, so for Ty for you, it would be this thing, except you would change this to tfarmer_jn_files.sh. And right, chief, it'd be mo_jn. So you would just replace this with your first initial followed by your last name, all lowercase. And that's the command that you would run and all your students would run. And that would copy all the files, the modified versions of the notebooks that you guys made. That's what would be copied into your student's home directory. So again, if you want to use the ones me and Lauren did, it's this command. If you want to use the ones that you modified, it's this command. Any questions about that? Okay, great. And again, we will be available. It's one of the reasons we're all sharing the calendar. So we'll be aware of when you're planning to teach at your home institutions, and I'll make sure to keep a lookout for any emails from you guys when you're teaching, just in case you run into any issues with any of this or if you forget anything. Once you have them copy that, I have just a note here of what things should look like at this point. So now you should see the following files added to your home directory, just like we went through in the course. So you should see all of your notebooks here. You'll also see, I'll add this to the list, you'll also see the version of DGE that has the likelihood ratio test added, so I'll add that to the list. Forgot about that. And then of course, when you're running the DGE, if you're not using the one you modified and you're using the ones that Lauren and I taught, you could pick whichever one that you want them to run. Just make sure that you have all your students opening up the same notebook, or else it'll be different for the students. And then I have picture of what that looks like down here. And so once they see all those things populate, all those files populated in their home directories, you'll have them double click on the Unix intro Jupyter Notebook. That's the first one that we start with in the left panel. And of course, that'll bring up a Jupyter Notebook in a new tab. And then you're good to go. You're ready to start your hands-on portion. And then I just have a few things here to note about the specific Jupyter Notebooks to make sure everything runs smoothly, as we've gone over with you guys throughout the bootcamp. When you run the Unix Intro Jupyter Notebook or the RNAseq FastQ to Count Jupyter Notebook, you want to make sure that the kernel is running as shown below here. So making sure that that top right corner says Python Conda environment :GL4U. If it's not, you click on whatever kernel is shown, and that'll bring up this menu here, which some of you guys have seen now. And you just select the Python Conda environment GL4U from the drop-down menu. And then when running the R Intro Jupyter Notebook or the RNAseq DGE Jupyter Notebook, you want to run the kernel that's indicated here. So this is the R Conda environment GL4U-R. And so again, you'll see that at the top right. If you don't see it at the top right, you click on it to change. It'll bring up a drop-down menu, and then you select on the one that's highlighted here. And so there's little instructions that I have in these pictures here to remind you guys to do that. So if your students are running into issues, that's the first thing that I would have them check. The first thing you want to have them check is to make sure that they're running the appropriate Conda environment, and you'll also see it running down here. Any questions about getting started once your students have accounts set up? Anything you want me to go over again? Okay. And then just lastly down here, I have a list of all the programs that we use when we run this program for RNAseq. And so this is just if anyone's curious about any of the software, anything that's used. I know, Elba, you had mentioned wanting to know the underlying languages for all of these tools. So this is links out to the documentations for all of the tools that we use. And then just listed here is the versions for all the tools that were used in this course. So that's all the information for getting things set up when you're ready to teach it at your home institution. Any questions about anything on this page of the GitHub? Okay, great. And again, once you guys sign up on the calendar, you have mine and Lauren's email. If you guys run into any issues, have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We really, really want you guys to be successful when you teach this at your home institution. So honestly, anything that we could do to help, please reach out and let us know. I just want to finish going over the stuff in this notebook, and then we'll head to lunch. So that's the bootcamp setup instructions. As I mentioned, all of the training materials that we use are on here. Of course, you don't need to download any of these locally. They are all they're all in SMCE. So there's no additional material that you need for your students to have other than getting accounts to SMCE. Everything's there. Everything's ready to go. But we do have the training materials on GitHub. And so this is, again, just describing the bootcamp instruction transitions between lectures and hands-on training. In the links below, we provide 4 complete slide decks for each major topic covered. And those same slide decks split up into sections based on when the material was taught during the week-and-a-half-long bootcamp. We also provide the 4 Jupyter notebooks that contain the hands-on training corresponding to the lecture material, as well as the completed versions of each Jupyter notebook. For information about when each section of the Jupyter notebooks are taught during the bootcamp, you could go to the schedule. So again, the schedule shows you the breakdown of how long each section took for us. Again, if that's helpful for when you guys are planning this out, teaching to your students. And I will be linking the video recordings once they pass NASA security screening. And then just go back here, Bootcamp lectures. So this links out to where all the lectures are. You can also get there by clicking on the lecture folder at the top. So I do need to update these because I know I made some changes to them. So I will be updating them today. So by the end of today, all of these will be fully updated. But what you'll see, like you see in here, is you just see a description. This is Introduction to NASA Space Biology GeneLab and the command line. The full lecture can be clicked here, was taught during, and then I'm going to break down the lecture into the chunks that were taught, just in case you would want just a teacher know what slides were taught associated with each part of the lecture based on the schedule. So I will split those up as well. And then again, everything over here. So I do still need to upload one of, I think, Lisa, your presentation I still need to upload here. Could you remind me how much more SMCE time we will have after the boot camp? As much as you want. Also, can we request time for the instructors for planning course material? Yeah, for sure. You mean time on SMCE? Or you want time? Yeah, absolutely. So I was gonna, I think that, actually I didn't add that. I'm gonna add that to one of the questions. One of the questions in the post bootcamp survey, gotcha. Yeah, for, like training TAs, yeah, for sure. I'll add a question on the post bootcamp survey for how long you want to maintain access, and one of the options will be until you teach this at your home institution, which is perfectly fine, and I'll have an other for you to fill in for how long you want to maintain access for. So they won't remove your accounts until I tell them to. And if we're getting low on funding, I'll just reach out to my bosses and find funding to make sure that you guys can have access for as long as you need. So the lectures, this is the main landing page for the lectures. So this tells you that directly holds the lectures presented during the pilot GL4U RNAseq Educator Bootcamp. And so this basically also links out to these subdirectories for each lecture material. Again, they're all set up the same way. So you can get to the main lecture page by clicking there, and then you can get to each one of the segments of the lectures by clicking on them. Again, I'm gonna update this with the current ones by the end of the day today. All the current ones are in the Google Drive though. And then you can also get to each one of them, one of those subdirectories through these links here. So plenty of ways to navigate the different parts of this GitHub here. And then the corresponding hands-on training. So I have the link to the lecture with the corresponding training here on the right. And so that can get you to where all the Jupyter notebooks are, if you guys want the Jupyter notebooks here. So you could link out in that way. So here is how to set up and run basic Unix commands, Unix and R commands on the command line and through the Jupyter Notebook environment. That links to this subdirectory, where again, you'll see that these are the Introduction to Unix and R Jupyter Notebooks. And so you can get to these if you were to want to download them locally. I also have them on the Google Drive for you. You can get to them here. So this is the Unix intro one, might take a while to load here. And then you also have the R intro one, and then these are the files that you need. And there's a note here for the input files. The following input files are called, and those all link out to the files, again, that are listed here. And if you want the answer keys or completed Jupyter notebooks, if you go into the example subdirectory, which is also listed here, so it tells you completed introductory Jupyter notebooks in HTML format can be found in the example intro Jupyter notebook subdirectory. And then in here, what you see is, again, an explanation of what you'll find in this part of the GitHub. And it tells you that you can copy these by cloning the repository, and then there's instructions for how to clone the repository. We're also going to go over this after lunch, how to clone a GitHub repository. So we have completed Jupyter notebooks in HTML format. So this is where it could take a minute to load, depending on how many people are using Jupyter. And it might load not in the nice HTML format, but in HTML language as a SQL. And then, so you'd want to download it. But again, all of these you have in the Google Drive as well. And the other things that are important here, the answer key. So all of the questions that we go over in each Jupyter notebook, I have an answer key splitting up the questions based on section. So you guys have all the answers to all of the questions that are posed in the notebooks, as well as the completed notebooks in HTML format. So this is the intro one. And then going back to here, and you can also get there by navigating here. And then so each one of them are here. So if you want to go to the RNAseq one, these are all set up exactly the same way. And so again, a description of what's in here, a link to the actual notebook. That'll probably, while it load, went pretty quick actually. And then another example for the FASTQ accounts. And then in here, you'll find the completed notebook in HTML format. You'll also find the answer key to all the questions in that notebook. And in addition, because the HTML format, when it renders, it won't show those like HTML things that we view during the course. So like the FastQC reports and stuff. So because they can't be viewed within the HTML rendering of the Jupyter notebook, I also added a directory here with HTML output files. So these are all those HTML FastQC, multi-QC reports that we view throughout the course as well are here, again, because they're not visible in the completed notebook. So again, just a reminder, these aren't updated, they're close, but they don't completely match the ones that we went through. So I am gonna update all of these by the end of the day. And anything that you aren't sure of, it's written out with instructions in these things. We are 2 minutes into lunch. That is everything in the GitHub that I wanted to go over. Again, if you guys ever have any questions or forget where things are, please reach out to me or Lauren. I'm going to have you guys go to lunch now, take your hour for lunch, and when we get back, I'll start with any questions you guys have about navigating what's in GitHub, and then we'll move on to the post-bootcamp survey. So have a great lunch, and please be back here by noon Pacific time.